Greetings, everyone. Great to see everybody back again tonight. Welcome to another edition of the Peaceful Solution Character Education Program Teachers Certification course. My name is William. Wherever you are, if you're in the auditorium here at the Peaceful Solution headquarters in Abilene, or if you're wherever you are abroad, please be seated. Okay, so we're going to pick up back in the respect unit in chapter 5, the infamous chapter 5, responding to disrespect. If you're joining us online on Facebook, go ahead and go to the top of the page. We do have these manuals free of charge. You can download online. There's a drop-down menu up at the top of the page. Go ahead and click there, and you'll see we are in the 4th manual in the intermediate series. There's 5 manuals. We are in the Respect Teacher's Manual, and we are going to pick up back on page 125. Actually, we finished 125, but we will do a little rehearsal before we move on tonight. Chapter 5, Responding to Disrespect. And I say it's infamous because it's, as our other teachers have said, and I'll tell you again, we've probably taught this particular lesson an edited down, scaled down version, because you only have like 45-minute blocks, 50-minute blocks in a junior high setting, to teach this particular lesson. But, you can certainly, we call it a power lesson because we take the strongest points from this particular lesson and emphasize them to the students in the junior high and high school level. And it's one they really love. The teachers love it, and so did the students. Okay, so we've been talking about, in the last class, we were talking about how positive communication on page 124 helps us deal with disrespect. And I went over some key points. I'm going to go over it one more time tonight just to kind of get our focus back on what is the main points of this lesson in chapter 5. Let's go ahead and put up the first visual. I want to go back over some of these key points, and the key points, one of them, the first one here, says responding to disrespect with more disrespect only adds fuel to the fire, the peaceful solution. We also learned that we have no control over what other people say and do. We can only control the way we respond to what people say and do. And then we learned that preparation, we need to be prepared to be disrespected on a daily basis because not everybody's learning the peaceful solution, but we are. So we need to be prepared to be disrespected. And preparation requires us to have self-control. Remember, the ability to stop, think, weigh out our options, and proceed with the right course of action. Whether it's something we need to say or do, we always want to make sure it's right, meaning it doesn't bring harm to ourselves or somebody else. We also learned that we don't want to hide behind the emotion of anger. Okay, we don't want to, not be able to express or communicate our primary emotion, whether it's embarrassment, fear, frustration, whatever it might be. We need to deal with that appropriately and not shield ourselves or hide behind the emotion of anger, lashing out at somebody rather than communicating to them what our needs are, or what our feelings actually are, our true feelings, our primary feeling, or first feeling. Remember, anger is a secondary emotion. It's not a primary emotion. We don't get angry first. We never get angry first, okay? And then we also learned, if you can put up the next slide, we were going over, the next slide, please. We were going over how A is for appropriate responses. Some of the responses that we could give in a situation where somebody's pushing our buttons or bullying us and so forth. Some of the best replies we could get is, some of the ones we read about, we could probably be friends if you were not such a joker. I resemble that remark, and smile as you leave. Then it's possible avoid that person. And you could say, there was a time when your remark would have hurt my feelings, but not anymore. Or you could just laugh, or you could say, are you laughing with me or at me? then laugh or smile. Just kind of make light of it. Or you can just do what a wise man once said, which is say nothing. Okay? Sometimes the appropriate response is not to say a word, because sometimes it could actually make the situation worse if you say something in response to somebody's pushing your buttons or trying to aggravate you or egg you on. They might just get upset because you're not taking it the way they want you to. They might get upset because you're not giving them that reaction that they want, and you're making light of it. Okay, but remember, it's never appropriate. We learned at the bottom of page 125, it's never appropriate to talk back to an authority figure who's correcting us or asking us to do some kind of job, okay? But if an authority figure is asking us to do something that's against the peaceful solution, against the rules, inappropriate touching, or they're asking us to do something that, is against any of the moral principles that we're learning in this program, whether it's stealing or keeping secrets that are not that should be revealed to your parents or some authority figure, you don't need to be doing that. You can excuse yourself and go to a trusted authority figure and let them know what's being done. But you don't have the right to disrespect anybody at any time, even if they're trying to get you to break a rule. You can still respectfully decline to do it and go to the appropriate authority. Okay, so having said that, let me go back to LP5. Let's go back to LP5D, because we want to cover the step that we're on right now, which is step number 6, where it says, tell students that using positive, respectful communication is an important skill to help them express themselves in difficult situations. So as you see, we talked about last class, it's a skill to be able to communicate these things. It's not something we're born with. That's why we have a book. That's why we have a manual. That's why we have a program. It has to be programmed into our brain. It has to be taught to us to get into our mind, into our heart, and become a part of us, okay? Into our subconscious mind, as we learned we have an underlying mind that we don't quite have access to using at this time. But, attitudes and actions and things come from that subconscious mind without us even realizing that's where it's coming from. Because remember, everything that we've ever learned, we ever heard, anything that we've ever seen in our peripheral vision, it's all been downloaded into that subconscious mind from before we were even born. Okay, the things that were going on in our mother's womb, we picked up and we stored in that little database, or that storage. That's, it's like a computer storage disk, so to speak. And it's all written in there, whether we saw the actual page of the book. You can look at a page of a book and you could read every letter on that page, not consciously, but your subconscious takes a snapshot of everything. Okay, so it's downloaded in there. And sometimes the things that we've seen, I know they used to call it deja vu. Like when you feel like you've been somewhere before, or you've seen something before, you're kind of like, man, I think I've been here before. It seems like I've been through this very thing before. It's like I was at this very time and place before, Well, we don't realize that's how powerful the subconscious mind is. Your subconscious mind is bringing back a memory of something that might have been where your mother was before you were born. And you're just remembering that you were in that situation at one time. It's very interesting. I've had that occur many times in my life where I thought, wait a minute, I feel like I've been right here before at a certain time. That's called deja vu. That's what they call it. I guess that's a French term. I never really looked it up. But. All right. So it says on step 6, have students read the section A is for appropriate responses, which we did in the last class. And then we need to listen to the song, Show Respect Anyway, found on page 126. I've never been able to find that song. If anybody knows where it's at, possibly the next teacher can play it. I couldn't find it, but I'll certainly read the lyrics. Don't ask me to sing. I want everyone here to be my friend, so don't ask me to sing. It says, have students complete the accompanying, it says, discuss why disrespectful behavior seems so normal and what the negative outcomes are of retaliating with disrespect. Okay, and retaliation, remember we learned, is never an option. Never an option. So let's go ahead and put up the lyrics to the song Showing Respect, or Show Respect Anyway. And I don't know how well you can read that. It's kind of small, but I'll go ahead and read it to you for the people out there that are looking at the screen. I know it looks very small. I'm sorry, but possibly your eyes are better than mine. But it says, show respect anyway. It's such a tragedy when our hearts ache and we choose to retaliate. When you disrespect me, I disrespect you. This occurs with so many because disrespect is what they choose to do. Every day, people disrespect others, not showing love to one another. But where's the brotherly love that's hidden deep inside every one of us? Why not have self-control even when the worst things to us are told? But hold on, wait just a minute. What occurs when we retaliate and put our reputation at stake? This rate needs to lower down because disrespect is now spread in every town. But remember, choose to show respect no matter how much inside you feel rejected. Show respect even if someone is hurting you. Be in control of what you do. Hurting others because you're upset causes war and shows disrespect. The peaceful solution begins with you. In verse 2 it says, there are many reasons why disrespect seems to be a normal part of society. One reason is the entertainment industry. Did you know that what you see on television influences your thoughts, and in the peaceful solution we practice what we're taught. So gain control of your thoughts because they lead to actions. So act on peace and they get a great reaction. Teens watch talk shows and pick up what they see, commercials, sitcoms, and even the movies. Another form of disrespect is cursing and name-calling, which leads to murder and violence, which is presented as enjoyment. In a nutshell, we need self-control because we act impulsively and then we explode. Okay, so these are things, you know, when you look at the lyrics of this song, these are some of the things that we've gone over in this lesson. And we've learned that, you know, yes, Hollywood is a big factor in, you know, these attitudes, these kinds of ideas that come into our mind that we've been taught from a very young age through the media, books, video games, etc. Okay, so it says to discuss why disrespectful behavior seems so normal and what are the negative outcomes of retaliating with disrespect. Well, it's not just Hollywood. We also see our friends, our co-workers, sometimes teachers in schools, etc. You know, remember, not everyone's been taught the peaceful solution. They're not being taught moral character, so they're going to react in ways that, you know, they pretty much learned along the way from their parents, from their teachers, from their preacher, from their imam or whoever, you know, their religious leader is, etc. And yes, religious leaders teach war, you know. I mean, a lot of them do. A lot of them teach that fighting is acceptable, you know, that you can kill your enemy as long as, you know, it's sanctioned by the church or, you know, sanctioned by the mosque or whoever the leader is of that particular religion. You know, as long as they say that's your enemy and you can kill them, well, you can go right ahead and do it. So don't think that just because it's a religion that they don't teach these kind of things. They do. We see children all the time in the Middle Eastern countries, for example, and I'm not picking on the Middle Eastern countries because it's really everywhere, even here in America, but children very, very young strap on guns. You know, they're taught to strap on guns. They're taught how to use guns at an early age. They're taught that the Palestinians teach the Israelis and the Israelis teach the Palestinians that those are your mortal enemies there. You know, the Israelis teach the Palestinians are their mortal enemy and the vice versa. You know, I'm not saying every parent does, but many of them do. Many of them aren't wanting to fight in war. You know, many of them are trying to make peace with one another and trying to live side by side without any kind of problems. But remember, not everyone's interested in peace. Okay? In fact, war is a extremely lucrative business. Okay? There's a lot of money to be made in war. Okay? Ask the manufacturers of weapons. You know, you don't think they go home at night, you know, guys that work at Raytheon and Boeing and McDonnell Douglas, you know, these defense contractors, you don't think they go home at night and dream about peace, right? Peace breaking out all over the world, you know, you think they're hoping for that? I mean, come on, that would be like me being a car salesman and hope everybody goes back to riding horses tomorrow or something. I mean, how stupid would that be? So they actually believe that, you know, in order for them to make a living, you know, we've got to keep having these wars, you know. And so, you know, these think tanks are created in Washington, D.C. and other places, these think tanks where they sit around and they dream up scenarios of why we need to go to war with this country and that country and this country so we can make sure we can sell those weapons that we got, right? Because, you know, the defense contractors got to sell the weapons somehow. So we got to dream up all these ideas of why we need to have wars with all these people because we got to sell our weapons. So there's not, you know, let's just be realistic. Not everybody's interested in peace. I'm sorry. But it's because they've been deceived into thinking that, you know, war is so lucrative that peace could never make any money. You know, we could never make money if we had peace, you know. I couldn't sell all these billions of dollars worth of weapons, so how am I going to fill my coffers or fill my bank account? Well, I got news for you. If we didn't have to have wars, if we didn't have crime, if we didn't have all these consequences that come from breaking the moral principles that we're taught in the peaceful solution here, do you know how rich we'd all be? Because we wouldn't have to fund all the cops, we wouldn't have to fund all the courts, we wouldn't have to fund all the, weapons, the military, all these, the military is like the largest budget, isn't it? You know, close to $1 trillion a year, here in America. And we spend much, much more on defense than any other country, more than most countries combined here in America. Okay, do you realize that if we didn't have to pay just for the military alone, for all the bombs and guns and soldiers, do you realize how much money you would save? Each one of us as taxpayers. Do you think we'd be 30-something trillion in debt right now had it not been for all these wars? Because just since 9/11, I think we've spent probably $8 or $9 trillion on war alone. Okay, now think of all the money you could have saved, that we could have saved, and how rich we could all be if we didn't have to fund all these things that are caused by breaking moral principles. And I'm talking about even drug rehab facilities, all these money that we're paying for Medicaid and Medicare and, you name it. I mean, all these different social programs that need billions and billions of dollars a year. Why? Well, because we have to buy free diapers for the mothers that are teen mothers because they didn't use self-control and they weren't taught not to have premarital sex with that boy, or that boy was not taught not to have premarital sex with that girl. So he got her pregnant and she was only 13, and you think he's going to be able to go get a job and take care of that baby when he's only 14? No. So they got to go to, social services, and they have to get money for food stamps, for diapers, for formula, etc. And they say it's free, right? Is anything free? No, it's not free. The taxpayers are having to pay for it. Okay? And we can sit here all we want and say, well, what they want to do, doesn't really affect me. I think you're kind of foolish if you think it's not affecting you, and you're the one that's having to shell out all this money for all these programs and all these weapons, all these abortions, and all these other things that none of us really even want to be funding, do we? I'm not wanting to fund any of that stuff, but This is where our money's going. This is the reality of it. We have to pay our taxes, okay? We don't teach against paying taxes, in the peaceful solution. Pay your taxes. Follow the rules. Follow all the guidelines that it's set down, as long as it doesn't break any moral principles, right? Follow along. Because you're not responsible what they do with your money. You just pay your taxes because they do use it for other things like roads, and things that we enjoy, right? But they also funnel some of it to things that we don't really want. But we're not responsible for what they do with our money. We're only responsible for paying our taxes, right? It's just like if you find stolen money or you find lost money and you turn it in, you did your part. Now, whatever that person does with that money that you turned in, that's on them, okay? The only thing that we can do, remember, we have no control over what other people do. We can only control what we do, okay? And that's all we're responsible for. All right, so having read that song, and we're talking about, what would be the negative outcomes of retaliating with disrespect in any situation? All right, what would be the outcome? Peace? If we retaliate? If we get one up on somebody, because really that's really what the word retaliate means. It's like, you're taking score, a tally. And if you have a tally, let's say you get one up on somebody, so now you're 1 point ahead. Now they respond with disrespect. Now they're even. Now you both have the same number of, on each side. Now you disrespect them and you're up one on them. Does that ever bring peace? Have you ever seen it bring peace? Where people go at it and they just keep responding with disrespect with one another? Of course not. You're not going to get peace from war, It just doesn't work. Even though they try to make out like they're going to have peace through war, that's not, where do they get these ideas? They've been trying this for thousands of years and it's never worked. If war brought peace, the first time somebody killed somebody, peace would have broke out everywhere, right? Have you seen that occur? I haven't. Okay, so somebody's pulling our leg here. Somebody's trying to make us believe a lie. War brings peace? Possibly for a few minutes. You kill your enemy and, you shut him up. Now you don't have to listen to him, right? Yeah, but now here comes the cops. And now you got to go to prison and listen to more people, right? Listen to that TV blaring all day and, people trying to steal your commissary and people trying to knife you in the back. Oh, wow, you're going to have peace the rest of your life now, huh? Okay. Got a roommate named Bubba, I'm sorry, man. I've been there, done that, not interested in. That didn't bring me peace either, okay? All right. So let's go to page 127 because we want to look at some, and I'm thinking that's where I'm supposed to go. Hold on, let me make sure. No, sorry. Yeah, 127. Because step number 7 on LP5D does not include page 127, so that means we have to go ahead and teach 127 as part of step 6. Okay, you guys know that by now, right? That if you don't see the page number, it means it's implied in that particular step. So we'll go ahead and read maintaining control. Y'all remember what it means to maintain something? We learned in the self-control unit to maintain something, like to maintain a positive character, means that we keep it in its best working condition. It's like we maintain our car by checking the levels, checking the air in our tires, etc. Making sure we have a tune-up. We maintain that car, keep it in its best working condition, because if we do, it'll last us a long, long time. We maintain our clothes by folding them when we're done washing them, by ironing them, etc. Right? We maintain. So how do we maintain control? Well, we have to always be practicing this self-control in every situation, whether it's a positive situation, because remember, we have to have self-control even when we have positive feelings. Remember the little boy that jumped up and down, he got all excited because he won something, he won a $100 gift certificate, he ended up breaking his mother's vase, and now he had to spend that $100 on a new vase for his mom. Y'all remember that story, right? Okay, so even when we're having positive emotions, we have to have self-control, not just in negative situations. Remember that. Maintain control. So in this case, we're talking about maintaining control when somebody's disrespecting us, okay? And let's go ahead and put up the visual that we have for that particular page. So the first step is to remain calm. Remain calm. You remember the emergency broadcast system? You know, the voice would say, if this had been an actual emergency, you know, you would have been asked to duck and cover, you know, or whatever, you know, just remain calm. This is only a test of the emergency broadcast system. Well, you can think the same thing when someone's pushing your buttons or somebody's disrespecting you. You have to immediately stop and say, this is only a test. For the next 60 seconds, you know, we'll be having a test of my ability to maintain and practice self-control. Right? This is what we need to think. This is what we need to keep in our mind whenever somebody's, and it's not always easy, especially if somebody's really irate and they look like they're getting ready to slap us or something like that. You know, it's not always an easy thing, but we have to practice it and we have to remain calm, because if we don't, first of all, if we're not remaining calm, our thoughts are going to be all over the place and our feelings are going to be all over the place, and we're not going to have the right thoughts and feelings, and we're going to have actions that are going to be negative. And we don't want to do that. We got to remain in control because we're being taught the peaceful solution. We have to remain in control. It says, remain calm. Getting upset will not help the situation. In this case, it's okay to talk to yourself. It's okay to talk to yourself anyway, but in this case, you can talk to yourself. Okay, it says that's called self-talk. Use self-talk to calm yourself down and stay in control. Remember, like I'm saying, this is only a test. I'm just being tested. Okay, here's my opportunity. Thank you so much. Here's my opportunity to actually see if I can maintain my self-control and not lash out, not raise my voice, and then not escalate the situation. See? It's really actually a test for us to be able to exercise our character traits that we've been given. Patience, self-control, etc., right? And we're going to be talking about some of those character traits here in a minute. So it says, use self-talk to calm yourself down and stay in control. By remaining calm, you'll be better able to think clearly and rationally. Remember, because that's why we have the STOP acronym. Hold on. This is why we have this here. Because stop, why do we stop in this particular sequence here? We stop so we can calm down, so we can have clear thoughts. We can have nice, clear, rational thoughts, so we can think clearly. We stop so we can calm down and think clearly, because you can't think clearly when your emotions are flying all over in your brain there. You know, it's like being under the influence of alcohol. Okay? You're under the influence of your feelings, your emotions, and you're not able to make a rational judgment if you're having negative emotions. Okay? You're not able to make a rational decision. So you have to stop, calm down, so you can think clearly about what your options are in that situation, what you should say or do, and then you need to proceed with the right choice. And the right choice never brings harm to yourself, others, or the environment. Okay, so remain calm. That's step one. Number two, use a respectful tone of voice. This means no screaming and yelling. Even though you're upset, you can choose to use a normal tone of voice. Screaming at someone is disrespectful. If the other person lacks self-control, the result will be a screaming match in which no one wins. You ever been in one of those? screaming matches, you know. I'm sure all of us at one time or another have tried that foolish, made that foolish attempt to out-talk the other one, you know, to out-scream the other person, you know, and it just never, it's like retaliation. It just doesn't work. You get louder, they get louder, you know. And then next thing you know, fists could be flying, you know. Spit could be coming out of your mouth at the other person or whatever else. You know, I've seen many, many things occur with people when we didn't practice self-control and we started having one of those shouting matches. So use a respectful tone of voice. Calm. Don't raise your voice. Don't start screaming or yelling. And I know sometimes I've heard people tell me before, well, you were yelling at me. And I'm like, no, you've never heard me yell. You know, you've never heard me yell and you've never heard me scream, okay? If you heard me scream, I mean, you would really know it. Now, I might raise my voice a little bit to get your attention, but that doesn't mean I'm screaming or yelling. Let's be realistic about what screaming and yelling is. Screaming is something like that. Now, when I raise my voice a little bit, well, that's not screaming. So let's define what those are, right? Because I've heard many children tell me, well, you were screaming at me. Well, no, because I raised my voice and told you to sit in your chair, I was screaming at you? No, you haven't heard me scream. Now you know what I sound like when I scream, right? A little bit? You still haven't really heard me scream. I don't want to blow the mic up, right? I don't want to blow that mic up over there either. I don't want to hurt his eardrums. Okay, so use a respectful tone of voice. Sorry if I woke anybody up here, you know, I didn't mean to wake you up. Third step says be polite. Even when telling someone how you want to be treated, you can still be polite and say please and thank you. You know, remember what we talked about in the self-control unit about anger and how we can let somebody know we're angry. Right? We can tell them, hey, I really feel angry right now about what you said or did. You can say that without, you know, screaming and yelling and cussing and threatening or anything like that. You can say it, just tell the person how you feel. Don't tell the person you made me angry about, you know, when you did this or said that, because that's not true. Nobody makes us angry. We choose to become angry in a situation. But we can politely tell them, I feel very angry right now about what was said or done. Could you please refrain from doing that in the future? You can say that very politely. Remember, anger is a normal emotion. It's just how we respond, how we handle our anger that might be anything but normal. So be polite. You can still be polite even when you're being mistreated and say please and thank you, yet deliver your message in a frank and sincere way. This will help you avoid becoming disrespectful to the person you're speaking to. Remember, if somebody's mistreating you, the last thing you need to do is mistreat them, because what are they going to learn from that? Are they going to learn the peaceful solution? Remember, we're being taught. This is talking to us. Everybody else that you know out there and that you're dealing with out there, they're not reading this right now. You're reading this right now. So this is talking to us. This isn't talking to them. We have to be polite. We have to use a respectful tone of voice. We have to remain calm, not them. Now, here's the benefit though. If we remain calm, if we use a respectful tone of voice, and if we're polite, we're going to teach them how to handle when their buttons are being pushed. We're actually teaching them by our example how they should react to situations. And don't think that they're not going to notice, because people do notice when you act the peaceful solution way. You shine like a light, okay? You're like a bright, bright light in a dark, dark world, man. A bright light in a dark room. Because they don't see that in Hollywood. They don't see that in the books. They don't see that in the magazines and the comics. They don't see that in the movies. They see retaliation. They see retaliation everywhere in this world. People are retaliating against one another, getting even. Okay? Wars and fighting and divorce, all these things are part of retaliation. So the next step after be polite is always try to find a peaceful solution. Keep in mind that a problem without a solution is a problem left unsolved. Okay, and another saying is the further you are from a solution, the further you are from solving the problem. We gotta always know that there's always a solution to every problem. Is there a math problem that has no solution? That's what they're called, problems. And every math problem has a solution. But you just have to be taught how to come up with that solution. You have to be taught, what steps do I take in math to be able to solve that particular math problem. Once you learn how to do it, then it becomes easier and easier as you practice doing it. Well, it's the same thing with other problems. Any problem we have, there's always a solution. There's always a peaceful solution. And again, the people out there that aren't being taught the peaceful solution, they use that term peaceful solution all the time. But in their mind, peaceful solution means kill my enemy, live and let die. I think they used to have a song called Live and Let Die I grew up with. Let me live, but let everybody else die, and let me have peace. Well, no. That's not peace. That's not a peaceful solution. Nobody gets hurt in the peaceful solution. If there's a peaceful solution, nobody gets hurt, property's not damaged, you don't get hurt, nobody gets hurt. It's harmless. Nothing brings harm to anybody when the true peaceful solution is used. So it says it's up to you to offer a suggestion that will best fit the situation and end in a peaceful solution. It's up to us. Always try to find a peaceful solution. And if you don't know what the peaceful solution is, go to a trusted peaceful solution teacher or a counselor. Okay? We always tell the children in the middle schools, especially, go to your counselors at school, because school counselors know a lot about a lot of the concepts in the peaceful solution, and the school counselors actually want character education taught. Okay? The only problem is it's not mandated in the state of Texas. In other words, there's no law that says you must teach character education, and the emphasis is more on academics. But the school counselors, those poor school counselors, they usually get the child after the problem's there and after they're in the middle of some kind of trouble. And the counselors are wanting to be able to teach character education on a daily basis in the classroom. They're wanting that so the children can learn how to handle situations so they don't get dumped with all these problems that the children have. Because the children aren't being taught how to deal with a bully. The children aren't being taught about how to deal with a dysfunctional family, and etc. Okay? And the school counselors are overwhelmed with all the problems the children are having because children just don't know how to handle these problems on their own. And finally, and this is the one we're really going to hit on in the last 21 minutes of class, is don't hold a grudge or hold on to unkind thoughts about a person. Okay? If they're doing this to you, don't hold on to a grudge or unkind thoughts about that person. Don't treat the person badly. Learn to forgive. I forgive you. You hear that all the time, right? Oh, I forgive you. Hey, I'm sorry for doing that. Please forgive me. Oh, yeah, I forgive you. Sorry, sucker. You know what? Next time you do that, I'm going to, We don't even know what forgiveness is yet. Unless you're in the peaceful solution, you don't know the first thing about forgiveness. I'll prove it to you. But I will prove that they know medically that if you don't forgive, you're killing yourself. It says, don't treat the person badly, learn to forgive. Holding a grudge will lead to disrespect on your part. Remember, 2 wrongs never make a right. Remember that was what the author of The Peaceful Solution heard his dad say when he was growing up? And it actually set him on a course of being a peacemaker. He always learned he always remembered what his dad said. 2 wrongs, son, 2 wrongs don't make a right. Okay? Remember what it says in the Peaceful Solution and the teacher's note to the teachers? I think in the first book it says, just one word in the ear of your student, just one, word at the right time can set a child on a right course, on a course that, can actually set them on a course that will change their life for the better. Just one simple thing said at the right time. And I'm sure all of us can remember things that were told to us at certain times that really made a difference in our life in a positive way. So remember, two wrongs never make a right, and maintain your positive values. Maintain your positive values. Remember your value system that you learned about in the character unit on page 8? The moral values that we learned about are moral values. Hold on to them. Don't let them go just because somebody's pushing your buttons. That doesn't give us the right to just scrap everything we know, and react in a negative way. We still have to maintain what we know is right. Because how is this world going to change if we don't teach them how to do it by our own actions, okay? So don't hold on to a grudge. Now, can we go ahead and put up that next visual? I think it's the next one. Now, how did that S turn, how did that S get down there like that? It's supposed to be at the end of I guess that one skull got in the way or something. All right, well, it says unforgiveness, okay? Sorry about that. Please forgive me for not spelling that right. Do you forgive me? Are you going to hold it against me? You're not going to remind me after class, hey, man, that S was out of place. Because how do you know I didn't do that just to test you to see? I might have. No, I didn't, but... But, we'll see if you forgive me. We'll see if you say anything about it later. Next time I misspell something, you're going to say, well, you remember that other time you misspelled a word in that slide you did? And I'm going to go, hey, man, I thought y'all forgave me for that. Okay. All right. So let's learn a little bit about unforgiveness. Now, I got this information from Johns Hopkins University. I really did. Johns Hopkins? They're a very famous hospital, and I think in New York City. What I did is I just slightly altered a few words because I wanted it to match the Peaceful Solution as far as emotions go and the emotions we teach. But the concepts came from them. So they understand what unforgiveness actually brings. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about how unforgiveness affects our health. It says, it is well established that most physical sicknesses have an emotional component. Over 2/3 of hospital beds are occupied by patients who are put there because of their inability to organize and discipline their emotions. It is estimated that 50 to 75% of patients are sick because of the influence of thought patterns and emotions upon their physical body. You hear that? 50 to 75% of patients in hospitals are actually sick because they haven't learned how to control negative emotions. Wow. And they know this. And I'm not just talking about physical sickness. I'm talking about mental sickness as well. Unforgiveness, holding on to grudges, actually causes us to be sick. Mentally and physically. And a lot of times, we don't realize that's actually what it is. We're thinking, it's kind of like I remember I read a book back in the early 2000s. It was called Your Body's Many Cries for Water. Right? It was a book that I was told to read. The author of The Peaceful Solution told me to read it. He also told me to read a book called Feelings Buried Alive Never Die. And I'm sure it was talking about negative feelings buried alive, never die. When we try to hide these things or we just keep them, no. We're actually hurting ourselves when we hold on to these negative thoughts and emotions like unforgiveness. Unforgiveness is a negative character trait. Okay? It's a negative character trait. So if it's negative, that means it's taking something from us. It's depleting us. It's sucking the life out of us. Remember, Confucius once said, and we put it in the Peaceful Solution, holding on to a grudge is like drinking a glass of poison, waiting for the other person to die. The other person's not losing any sleep. You are. As your hair's falling out and your liver's being damaged and other problems are arising in the physiological makeup of your body because you're holding on to that unforgiveness, that grudge, you're destroying your mind, you're destroying your body, but the other person doesn't know a thing about what's going on. They're probably sleeping very soundly at the time. Let's look at the next slide. Also from Johns Hopkins. Unforgiveness poisons our personality and our character. It says, when you hear certain people who hold on to grudges talk, you can hear echoes of buried resentments and anger from long ago. At the time, their anger might have been understandable, but because they failed to forgive, their anger turned inward and became deep-seated. Their character and personality became poisoned by the entangled roots of bitterness anchored in their hardened hearts. When they speak, their words are sharp and biting, inflicting pain on the people around them. Have you ever talked to somebody like that? Like you can just tell, they just never having a great day. Like they just seem angry and bitter about everything. Okay? All they do is complain about life. All they do is complain about people. All they do is complain about this person, that person, my life this, my life that. Everything's negative. You ever met anybody like that? That's because they become poisoned by allowing themselves. And remember, they have not learned about forgiveness. They have not learned about the danger of holding grudges. They have not learned that you don't let something sit overnight in your mind without dealing with it with that other person that you're upset with. They haven't been taught that. They've been taught just to let it sit there and simmer, kind of like a crock pot. You put something in the crock pot, you let it simmer all day long and cook. It cooks and cooks and cooks, and finally, your goose is cooked, right? They just let it sit there and simmer. Let's look at the next slide. It says, unforgiveness causes disintegration and confusion. Remember, this is their words, not mine. It says, many negative emotions can paralyze and debilitate us because they produce an unhealthy physical and mental condition. They clog up our ability to think rationally and make right choices. We become bogged down by resentment, restlessness, fear, and guilt, and then our emotional ills turn in upon our own self and sap our energy. When negative emotions like resentment, frustration, aggravation, hopelessness, and anger accumulate to a certain weight, our mind and body cannot support them, and it gives way. So then we say, I'm going to pieces, I'm falling apart, I'm getting upset, or I'm flying to pieces. This describes a threatened state of imbalance or disintegration. Do you see how we're destroying ourselves when we don't forgive? This is just a small part of it. I'm not even going to show you all the other things that they say about this, about what it does to all your different organs in your body when you don't forgive. Simple thing, right? Do you know why forgiving someone is so hard? Because it goes against everything. It's kind of like, I'm supposed to forgive them after they just did this? What do you mean I'm supposed to forgive them and just let it go? They're supposed to get punished, aren't they? Aren't they supposed to feel like I feel? Aren't they supposed to feel pain like I do? What do you mean I just got to let it go? That goes against everything that you think, that your brain thinks, But guess what? It's necessary. We must do it. If we don't, we're hurting ourselves. We're killing ourselves. Let's look at the next slide, because I want to remind you from page, let's see, what page was this? Page 15 of the character unit. I want you to learn what forgiveness is. Forgiving means to refrain from holding anger or resentment towards someone who has wronged you. And it gives the example, your classmate laughed at you and you tripped. Rather than get upset with her or trying to get even, you forgive her and laugh with her. Okay, you forgive her and laugh with her, and let's just let it go, in other words. Really? I just let it go? Well, yeah. The flip side is, go ahead and hold on to it, be upset about it, hold a grudge, and go ahead and destroy your organs, destroy your mind, be bitter, be somebody that no one wants to even be around because you're always, sound like, the world is, just like the worst place, and life just sucks, and, you want to be that person? Nobody really wants to be around that person, do they? Look like you were raised on a sour pickle or whatever. Okay. Now, guess what? Forgiveness is number 7 on the list of 9 character traits that are taught in the character unit that I just showed you. Go to the next slide. There's 8 other character traits. And guess what? All those 8 traits are necessary for you to forgive. You have to practice all these other 8 traits in order to forgive somebody. Let me show you how. Number 1 says educated. Getting all the facts and making sure they're correct before making a decision. So, I just gave you some facts about unforgiveness. Did you know all those facts before? No, you didn't. I only gave you some. So you need to get all the facts about unforgiveness, and you need to learn, if I don't forgive that person, what are the consequences? On the other hand, if I do forgive this person and just let it go and practice doing that, what are the benefits to me, right? So you have to get educated, right? Number 2, respectful. To value others as important as yourself and to allow that to show through your actions and attitudes. Well, remember, respect, as we're being taught in this unit, means to show consideration, care, and concern for others. To treat others the way you want to be treated. So, do you want somebody to forgive you? Yes or no? Yeah. So what do you need to do? Well, you need to you need to be respectful to them and forgive them too, right? So you have to be respectful. Number 3, patient. Patient means demonstrating self-control and remaining calm when things don't go your way. Well, did things quite go your way when somebody disrespected you and did something to you that you didn't want them to? No. So you need to be patient with that person and realize that, possibly that person was having a bad day. I know he said that I know she told me I was never born, but she just said that because she's flustered about something. Right? We need to be patient with people and realize that people have difficulties, even mental illnesses. We talked about these things. Number 4, honest and trustworthy means being fair. Being fair. Is it fair when you don't forgive somebody, but you want them to forgive you? Is that fair? Okay, so you have to be honest when it comes to forgiveness. You got to use honesty. What about number 5? Humble. Not being proud or arrogant. A humble person will not argue, dispute, nor disobey set rules. That takes humility to be able to forgive somebody, doesn't it? To be able to stoop that low and say, even though that person did this, I need to forgive them, because I want to be forgiven too. That takes humility to do something like that. What about number 8? Steadfast and persistent means when you're determined not to give up or change what you've set out to accomplish. Well, if you're going to practice the moral trait of forgiveness, don't you have to do it on a consistent basis, steadfastly and persistently? Or do you just forgive one day and the next day you don't forgive? No, you have to be steadfast and persistent in your practice of the forgiveness, so you have to use steadfast and persistent as well. Because you don't want to change. You want to be determined to forgive every time. No matter what they did to you, no matter how bad an offense it was, you want to always, maintain that ability to forgive that person. And number 9, self-control means not yielding to impulsive thoughts and actions. Doesn't it take self-control to forgive? Yeah, because it actually requires you to stop and think, well, how would I want to be treated in this situation? And what are my options? Well, I can hold on to unforgiveness and grudges, and I can destroy my heart, my mind, my body, or I can choose to just let it go and forgive this person and practice the moral trait of forgiveness, and I can receive all the benefits that come from that. Your choice, but it takes self-control, right? So do you see how it takes every one of these character traits to practice that one? So do you think people out there know how to really forgive? How could they? They don't know all these character traits. They're not even being taught what they are. So they don't even know the first thing about forgiveness. Not really. Now they know bits and pieces, because I just read some stuff from Johns Hopkins. They know what it causes, but they don't know the solution. They don't know the solution to unforgiveness. They don't have the solution. You have the solution. You're being taught the solution. Now, let me show you. Let's go to the next slide. This is a popular saying on the internet. It says, forgive others, not because they deserve forgiveness, but because you deserve peace. This is a saying by John Lockwood Huey, or Huey. And yes, it is a bunch of hooey. Forgive others, not because they deserve forgiveness, but because you deserve peace? Hey, that's a nice poster, right? Looks all flowery and pretty, right? Well, let's find out if it's true, though. Remember, just because you read it on the internet, does that make it true? Just because they sell fancy posters with saying like this, does that mean it's a true statement? Let's find out. Go to the final slide. On page 8 of the character unit, it says, morals. What do they have to do with my character? It says, moral principles in regard to human life means acknowledging and accepting that life is valuable and all people have the potential to contribute to society. When you have a moral attitude toward others, you accept and appreciate they have the right to live in peace, safety, and security. Now go back to the last slide. Go back to the last slide. It says, you deserve peace. They don't? What did we just read? Who deserves peace? Everybody does, right? Okay, go back to the next slide. Second point from page 3 of the Respect unit says, in this unit of the Peaceful Solution Program, we will learn how to develop the positive character trait of respect. Respect means to recognize the value of people and things and to treat them with consideration, care, and concern. Well, hold on a minute. Go back to that last slide again. Let's look at that statement. Forgive others not because they deserve forgiveness. They don't deserve forgiveness? Isn't respect part of forgiveness? So don't they deserve it? Of course they do. They deserve forgiveness, don't they? So do you. Okay, let's go back to the next slide again. Let's see what else we might have missed here. Oh, whoa, on page 128 of the Respect unit, it says, only those who treat you right deserve respect. Is that what it says? What does it say? Come on. Who deserves respect? Everybody. Everybody. Let's go back to the last slide. Forgive others not because they deserve respect. Oh, they don't? Yes, they do. Right? They deserve respect. They deserve forgiveness. Everybody deserves forgiveness. We don't have the right to withhold it from them. Okay, we don't have the right to do that. Okay, but now that doesn't mean you won't do it. I'm just telling you, if you're a moral person, you do not have the right to say, I don't forgive you. An immoral person that doesn't know the difference between right and wrong, they'll say that. But Peaceful Solution students, there's no room for unforgiveness in our lives, okay? All right, so you're going to have to forgive me because I went 1 minute over. You can forgive me? If you don't hurry up and forgive me, I'll be 2 minutes over. Okay, so next class is 6/18/2023 at 5:30 p.m. Central Standard Time. Let's all practice the positive character trait of forgiveness. We'll see you next time. Have a great night.